So I was going between the islands and in my sea kayak, and out here there's really a lot of current and waves and boats and wind, and it's a good workout. So I'm going over to this island, and all of a sudden all the energy just left my body. I was like, oh man, I got like 4 miles to go. I don't know if I'm gonna make it.
John, how did you find carnivore?
Well, I'm the perfect guy for carnivore. I'm the guy that, like Jordan Peterson always talks about me. I'm a Christian, I'm a bricklayer, and I'm a carnivore. And so, if you ever listen to Jordan Peterson, he talks about that all the time, and I kind of want to get a copyright from him. But yeah, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and back then you didn't have to worry about food or anything. I always, started snow skiing when I was 5, and then I started water skiing, and and then I was a bricklayer. So I mean, I was always kind of rough and tumble and just great. And then so my story's not quite as dramatic as a lot of your guests, man. When I watch your guests, I just get like a tear in my eye. Those guys are amazing. All the stuff they've gone through, cancer and on all these Crohn's and all this stuff like that. And I never did have that bad. But I think what really got me started was I worked with my dad quite a bit, and I watched him die of Alzheimer's. And that was really tough on me. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I'm never gonna do that. I'm not gonna die of Alzheimer's. I just said no way. And so I started researching that, and throughout my whole life, I learned to. I've always been a really good reader, and I've always read a lot of books. I love to read and everything. So back in the day before Google, you had to look things up and find books and things like that. So I started studying, you know, just lots of stuff about health. I always tried to stay healthy and stuff. And then my daughter came around about 30 years ago, and I started reading about vaccinations and different problems that people would have with that, and different books on that. ADHD and all these kids things you want to learn about before you get your daughter uh let anybody else touch her, right? So anyway, I that's kind of when I got started. And then and then so then my dad died like in 2016. And I've been a bricklayer my whole life, but I've also like worn a lot of other hats. I've done captain work, and I worked as a chef for a while, and I was working at Alderbrick on Hood Canal out here. I'm out here on the Puget Sound of Washington. Just beautiful, just miles and miles of water, and it's really beautiful. And Alderbrick was owned by Bill Gates, and so it was a really 4-star, whatever you want to say, restaurant, hotel, resort thing. And his dad lived right next door. So Bill would come in with his helicopter and stuff, and I cooked dinner for his chefs one night. So like the pressure was on to cook and make food really taste good. So I've got the culinary degree and all that stuff, and everybody in the kitchen also had culinary degrees. And people would come in all the time and say, "Oh man, your food is so good. It's just so good. I just can't make it that good." And so I would look at the other chefs, and I would look at each other and laugh and just say, "Yeah, butter and salt." And so it was just people didn't know how to cook or make anything taste good, and we just kind of laughed, and it's pretty easy. And that kind of goes right into it. But so then my brother, so well before my brother died, I had a gallstones, and that's kind of what really got me into it. So gallstones are super painful, and they just love taking out your gallbladder, right? And so that it's very expensive. My friend just had his gallbladder out. He had insurance and everything, and they still charged him like $60,000 over here. So it's ridiculous, right? To go to the hospital. And he's a good friend of mine, and but he's one of those kinds of guys that he just hates spending like $10 a month for vitamins, But then you end up going to the hospital and you spend all that money anyway, right? So anyway, go back to so then my gallbladder, yeah. So I was working as a chef, of course, eating all that good food, and a lot of French, pastries and things like that. And then I had the gallstone, super painful. And so then I went to a holistic doctor, and because the other doctors, they just want to cut you, they need your money, right? And so I the holistic doctor, he shook the beads and danced around, and he helped me clear my gallbladder. Just kidding, but he just did it naturally. I got over it, and then you know how you're walking down the street in a city, and there's a big pane glass window next to you, and you look over and you see a reflection walking by, and you just go, man, who is that big fat guy walking by there? You just can't believe it, right? And so then I was watching Muhammad Ali and George Foreman fight, and George Foreman was like 6'3" or 4 or something, and he was 233 pounds. And, I mean, he was just cut in that fight, and, and I'm like, that's exactly what I weigh. I weigh 233 pounds and I'm only 5'8", you know? And I was just like, I couldn't believe it, So then I did fasting. So what I did was I just grabbed a couple cases of water and threw them in the truck. And then it was in the wintertime. So I just went out like on the Oregon coast for like 2 weeks. I didn't eat anything. I just drank water. And I lost a lot of weight. And then, so then I was feeling pretty good. I lost all the weight. I got over my gallbladder issues. And then right during that time is I found Dr. Eric Berg on YouTube. And he's talking about keto and all this stuff, and low carb. And so I started doing the keto for a while. And but so from January of 2019, or yeah, 2019, and then till it took me about 3 months, I lost 50 pounds and felt really good, And also, so I had basically, to backtrack a little bit, I had all the aches and pains that everybody talks about, the bleeding gums, the achy joints, like climbing up and down a ladder, doing, because I was doing masonry and bricklaying and all that stuff. And that's one of the toughest jobs in construction is bricklaying, And so, yeah, I had a hard time going up and down the ladder. My knees hurt like crazy. I thought, well, I've been doing skiing for 50 years, snow skiing and water skiing. And I thought I just blew my knees out, it's just like felt like bone on bone, right? Well, then of course my knees feel great, right? So then within a couple months, I mean, the inflammation went down. You can tell when you look in the mirror, the inflammation goes down in your face. And so, so then in April, my brother died, and he was 3 years older than me. And he died. It was basically, he was going to turn 62 the next day. And, and I had been after him for a long time to lose weight and stuff, but he would not go to a doctor at all. And of course, when I talked to him, I really didn't know much about keto or carnivore or anything like that, just until a couple of months before that, prior to that, And so that hit me pretty hard. That's another thing about the that everybody talks about is the carnivore diet is your mental strength and your memory and all that, comes back. And I was doing really good, and that really got me through it. That really got me through it. And then my mom also started doing that right about that time, and she's just turned 88, and she's had several strokes and things, and she's doing great. She lost like 60 pounds, She's 88. She's a carnivore. She's doing great. So anyway, so yeah, my brother died, and then I just stuck on I basically graduated from keto slowly to carnivore. And I mean, I felt like I was 20 again. I was riding dirt bikes with guys like half my age. So right where I was living in Bremerton, Washington, um, really good dirt bike area up there. And I was riding with a lot of Navy guys, a lot of Navy kids, and it was so fun because it's so fun to have all your strength and vitality and stuff, and you're ripping by these guys and going up the hills on your dirt bike, and you get up there and you pull your helmet off and you're all gray, and these guys, it's just so fun, and they'd be pulling over after some of these hill climbs out here are like 4,000 vertical feet of a hill climb on a dirt bike. So some of them are like 45 minutes long of a hill climb, right? And it's a real technical, really fun riding. And we'd get up to the top. I'd run into guys, and they're half my age, and they're just sweating, and they got pull over, and they got to have a granola bar and stuff like that. And I'm just like, come on, you guys, let's go. What do you guys want to stop? I guess you can stop if you want. I'm ready to ride, and it was really fun because like I would drive out. So basically, I got into intermittent fasting too at that time because, like I said, I'm really into reading, and I got all the books. I got the books by Jason Fung and all these things. And I started doing the intermittent fasting after the big fast, and I started doing like one meal a day. So I would ride. So this is really good story as far as like what can happen is so I sometimes I would drive like 2.5 hours to get to the mountain to ride. And then I would ride for like 4 hours, just hard riding, jumping over logs, everything with my dirt bike, and then I would drive, load the dirt bike up, drive back home, another 2.5 hours, and I wasn't even hungry, you know, and I'm just burning through the calories, just, and I'm not tired. I feel great. It's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to show up the young guys.
So what made you graduate between keto and carnivore? Was it something that just happened naturally because you didn't like the veggies, or was it you saw something on YouTube or read something somewhere?
Yeah, that was the kind of a slowly developed thing as I started watching more videos, Sean Baker and Chafee and those guys. And then also, I'd be riding my dirt bike, and man, I mean, sometimes I'd have to pull over and take care of business. You know how it is when you eat vegetables, you gotta poo, sometimes. And sometimes you're like, oh man, I gotta go, right? You gotta go like right now, right? And so I thought I was doing the right thing, eating the vegetables, and then because I'd have these big salads and stuff, and then I knew the seed oils are just terrible, right? So I knew I didn't want to have that on there. So I would make my own dressings and stuff like that. But yeah, that it was a slow transition. And then yeah, I just got tired of going to the bathroom all that time because like one thing about uh, there a lot of doctors will tell you, and you can like all this stuff I'm telling you, you can research it and find out, right? But so you look at your fingernails, you can tell a lot of by your health, by your fingernails, by your hair, by if you look at your poo, and see how it is, what it looks like, and everything, and in your feet too, right? You can tell if your feet look good and your toenails and all that stuff, and your face if you're inflamed and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I just went right over into carnivore once I started learning more about it, and it was really amazing.
Yeah, and when was that when you made that move? Was that
That was
like in
pretty.
2019?
Yeah, that was within about a year, I would say, that I kind of just switched right over. I got a lot of good ideas on how to stay on target and how to get through the beginning stages of carnivore and stuff like that. Because I've been doing it for a long time, so I know a few things about that. And then also what to do if you fall off the wagon and all that stuff, because I've been through all that stuff. Because like if we jump ahead now to last year, I so last summer I had a 1940 wooden sailboat, and I was fixing that up, and then I sold it, and then I bought this boat last summer, and then I brought it over here to the. I bought it all the stuff that happened in Idaho, and then I brought it over here. So anyway, I was super busy, and I all these people. I got a lot of friends, a lot of got gray haired guys, right? And they want to buy me lunch and stuff, and I'm super busy, so I'm having sandwiches, and then I would have ice cream. And so then my left knee, just got really in severe pain like all summer, right? But I was so busy, I didn't really go back to full carnivore until just like 2 months ago. So so I fell off every. You fall apart, right? Because when you're on carnivore for a long period of time, you start feeling really good, and all of a sudden your testosterone's back. You feel like you can conquer the world and all that stuff. And then you fall off the wagon, and then boom, like that, you're just in pain again, right? You've probably had that. I've heard you say that talking about eating vegetables and stuff. And so that was me last year. And so now I'm back on track, and and living on the boat. It's really pretty easy. I live on a limited budget. I'm just uh, like I got fired because I wouldn't wear the mask, during the pandemic and stuff. And so I retired early with no money, and I just live kind of day to day. But I do carnivore just fine, and I got some good tips on that too if you want. So that's kind of my story. It's pretty plain Jane. It's not super dramatic. And been super healthy. And I don't drink or smoke or chew or anything like that. So I don't have a lot of stress on my life. I'm really blessed, right? And but so my story is not super dramatic, but I feel great. I'm going to be 65 in a couple weeks, and I don't take any medication. I'm I'm strong as ever. I can do whatever I want. I have a 36-foot sailboat, this thing, and I sail it by myself wherever I want to go. Solo. Let's switch gears for just a minute and talk about some of the things that happen and kind of pitfalls when you first start, right? So when I first started carnivore, I was doing a lot of sea kayak and well, dirt bike also, but then sea kayak out here. And so I was going between the islands and in my sea kayak, and out here there's really a lot of current and waves and boats and wind, and it's a good workout. So I'm going over to this island, and all of a sudden all the energy just left my body. I was like, oh man, I got like 4 miles to go. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And so I reached down and I grabbed some of the water, and I took about 4 big handfuls of salt water, and boom, my energy came back just like that. So then, because what happens is when you eliminate or when you're doing the carnivore diet, it's diuretic, right? So you pee a lot, and so you end up peeing out all your electrolytes. So so that's what happened. And then so now whenever I go anywhere, I have like a little thing of salt in my truck, and if I get tired, if I ever feel like I'm tired, I just put a little salt on my tongue. Energy comes right back. So that's all I do. In fact, and I have a story about that, a little bit, a short story. But my friend over there in Idaho, he was giving me a hard time for being carnivore, and he goes, "Yeah, you're carnivore, but you're still fat and everything." Because I was working on my truck, or my boat, and I got fat again, right? A little bit of belly, right? So anyway, he's giving me a hard time and everything, and I'm like telling him, "Man, dude, you got to do carnivore." And so he's out in Montana, and he's drinking way too much water, right? And he totally depletes himself of salt. And he goes to the emergency room. He thinks he's going to die, and and then he's in such bad shape. He calls his girlfriend up and says goodbye to her. He's like, "I'm not going to make it. This is it." That's how bad he was, right? And he called me up, and I said, "Okay, take your finger, put it in some salt, put it on your tongue." And he did it, and he goes, "Oh man," he goes, "I feel better." And he survived, but you when you get to be my age, everybody talks about all their medication they're on and how sick they are and all that stuff. But the doctor never asks them, "Well, what did you eat? What have you been eating?" The doctor never, and that's what I do. I just say, well, what have you been eating? And I already knew. I go, you, you can't, you can't eat that garbage.
You know, you go to the doctor, and the doctor is like it. The assumption is always your body's broken, not that you're maybe not eating the right thing, or it's an electrolyte issue or something like that. The immediate assumption at the doctor or at the hospital, wherever you go, is your body's broken. We need to give you some medication for that, or you need an operation.
Right. And that's because I'm always thinking about what I'm going to say during this interview, of course, and then it all goes out of your mind or whatever. But you know, that's what I wanted to mention was carnivore diet. It's not really a diet; it's a lifestyle, right? And everybody's different. Every person you've interviewed has a different story, and they come at it from a different angle. All of them do it differently. There's not one person that's doing identically what I did or what anybody did, right? And so everybody has their own story and their own journey and their own reason for doing it. And if you look at the people that are really successful in doing it, they all have a really good reason to do it. It's usually pain, right? Cancer or like gallbladder or like a thorn in the flesh, right? And so my thorn in the flesh is my knee, because when I stopped carnivore, well, I was kind of still doing carnivore like 80%, right? But the inflammation came right back to where I was injured at one time. And so like I've had back surgery and things like that. And so as soon as I eat carnivore, it goes right, or I mean carbs, it goes right back to where I had those injuries. And then like you're saying, like when you're talking about people and going to the doctor and stuff, man, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe anybody, you know. I don't believe anything. And so you got to go in there and with your own education and see what's going on. Especially it's easy nowadays. But because of Google and stuff, you can really, and all the good carnivore doctors, just amazing. Each person has their own story and their own way of doing it. Some do it 90% or 100%, and then there's all kinds of different ways to do it too. Like some people can have a glass of wine once a week or whatever it is, and they'll never become alcoholics, right? But other people are addictive. That's what I am. I'm like an addictive personality. So if I drank, it was all the way, right? And the same thing with so carbs are also the same way. They're so addictive that I'm a I'm an addictive personality where I just can't indulge in a little bit. I just go off the rails, right? I think that's one of the most important things is getting your determination and why you're doing it and things like that. And even if I was young, or if I would have known this when I was young, I still would have done it. Even if I felt like really good in my 20s and I knew the information that I know now, I would still do it. So let's talk about carnivore and how can you do it if you don't have a lot of money. And so I just looked up. Costco has a beef chuck roll for like 32 pounds for 4.59 a pound, right? And you can. So I'm on this boat, and I have limited space, limited refrigeration, right? So I canned it. I canned this meat, and it's you can get like this was 3.50 a pound, and there's 2 pounds in here, and this is enough for me for one day. I eat about 2 pounds of meat a day. And so this thing here, I can it, and real simple. I just have this one little pot here, put 4 bottles in there, and I can can enough for like 2 months. So I could go out on the ocean for 2 months, never hit a store, and I basically spend less than $10 a day for my whole food budget. So you can do it. People can
So,
do it.
so what's the process of doing that canning?
Oh yeah, it's just this is real simple. You don't because a lot of people do pressure canning. I picked this up for $12 at Walmart. And so there's lots of ways to do it. It's just water bath, and you can find out about it on YouTube. And Like I watched this Amish lady do it, and super easy, super easy. I did it, and you can store ahead of time a lot of food. So if you're busy, but if you have a couple a day, a week or something where you can cook, like if you have a family, uh, basically all you do is open up this jar and heat it up, and you got dinner, and it's so good, and you're just filled up, and all the fat and all the good stuff's still in there, and it's really really good, and so it's simple. My life is totally simple. Like I'm a chef. I know how to cook and make a lot of dishes, right? But I don't spend any time cooking or anything now. I just like my whole day is free, you know. And so if you're a family, like a wife, or you have kids or whatever, you could totally do it too. And the kids love it. Once the kids get on that, they just love it.
Right. Wow. Oh, because I was going to ask, how easy is it to do carnivore living on a sailboat? But that's how. Yeah.
It's so easy. Yeah, it's so easy. I take a Costco run, and also my sister and my mom live in down by the Snake River, and that's all just grass-fed beef. Just covers the hills with beef, right? And so we picked up. That's another thing I was going to say is you can get beef. Go to the butcher, and you can buy a quarter or a half or whole beef. And so we're really fortunate. We got a whole beef cut and wrapped. It was $3.50 a pound. So that's for the whole cow, right? And so I'm sure you can find people to get together to buy a quarter or a half or whatever at your local butcher, depending where you live. But you can do it. And then Costco, you can buy that thing at Costco too. That's only like $4.59 a pound. So even the cheapest tube of ground beef at Walmart is better than spending your money on anything else, really. So it's real doable, real affordable, and it's not hard at all. I don't spend hours cooking. I used to spend hours just cooking up all these great dishes and all this. I don't do any of that anymore. I got way better things to do. Carnivore is huge. The subject is huge, right? So you can get into microbiology, glycobiology, the social structure, the socialness of eating, and psychologically, and all the everything that people are just getting bombarded with. Like if you go down to Texas and go to the barbecue, man, it's a huge event. It just takes hours, and it's just like that's why you went there. You went there to gorge yourself, and it's a huge social activity, right? So everything kind of revolves around food. So this whole huge subject of carnivore, and if you look at like Einstein's equation, right? It's really complicated. Not too many people can understand it, right? It's the theory of relativity, right? But when you look at it, it's just E equals mc squared. When you look at it on a piece of paper, it's just a simple equation, right? And so that's the same way it is with carnivore. When you have all these things, your psychology, nerves, socially, physically, everything, your family, everything all around revolves around this food and stuff. But it's just a real simple equation. It's just eat meat, drink water. That's it. Everything else is superfluous, right? And so you don't have to revolve your life around food. You know, it's great. Like I went to the yacht club here to the Christmas dinner, and I just had a great time talking to everybody. And but I didn't eat anything or drink because I don't drink anyway. So you can still have a social life, and but there's so many areas that we could talk about because for me it's real easy. I'm just a single guy. I don't have any pressure, outside pressure. But if you're married, and you're like me, if there's chips in the cupboard, I'm going to eat them, right? So if your spouse is not doing it with you, that's another temptation that somebody is going to have to really overcome. That it's not I don't have to overcome that. So it's such a huge. That's why your channel is so great because you get all these people from all these different walks of life and tell their story and how they do it and stuff. But it's just simple. Just eat meat. You know. That's what.
Yeah. So speaking of the social aspect of it, like, have you had anyone around you go, well, that's a bit weird, but I want to try it?
Yeah, that happens all the time. But it's I'm the kind of guy that I just laugh. Like I've been teased my whole life, right? Working as a bricklayer, right? So it's just funny to me, And so I just joke back with them and stuff, and if I can get somebody talking about the subject, that's great for me. I can go. I've been studying it for a long time, so I can talk about kind of any direction you want to talk about. So yeah, but it can be a problem, if you're in a tight knit family or community or something. I mean, you really got to be you got to step out, and be different. So especially yeah, cultures like Japan, the nail gets hammered down and stuff. So I can see how it'd be a real problem.
Yeah. But have you had anyone around you give it a go?
Yeah, my friend who thought he was going to die is doing it. My mom is 88, doing great. My sister, and then I just kind of evangelize to people if they want to talk about it or whatever. But I think it kind, what I found is it kind of takes a come to Jesus moment where you're really hurting. You've got a real serious problem, and that's when you really do it. You know, so pain is a good driver. But most people are kind of stuck in their ways, and then also people are really they have that white coat syndrome or whatever, where they just believe anybody that has a white coat on, right? And a lot of people are just swayed by media and stuff like that. Because when I was a kid, they they said don't trust anybody over 30, right? That's what they used to say. And then the hippies were counterculture, right? So we were just already didn't believe anybody that anything anybody said already. And now culture's kind of turned where people just believe the authority figures, you know. So you kind of have to be a rebel, I think, and but it's well worth it. Well worth it
Mm.
just to be healthy. Like I'm 65, I feel great. I haven't lost any of my brain, and I do whatever I feel like doing physically. So you got to,
So
yeah, you got to go against the grain.
it's interesting that you bring that up, how the counterculture's kind of switched, right?
Right.
Because I remember 24 years ago, it was around that time, there was a World Economic Forum meeting in Melbourne. It was around that time. And the people protesting that meeting were the people that are now saying, we have to listen to them.
Yeah.
It's like the whole thing, it's gone 180 degrees. It's really weird.
Yeah. I'm so old that I everything kind of passed me by. I feel like the world kind of passed me by. Like I'm stuck back in in the 70s kind of. But yeah, it's crazy. And then, if you look at any movie or TV show or picture of anybody in the 70s, I mean, there wasn't a fat person there, right? Like Chips or any of those old shows. And so that's kind of when I started getting fat too, was kind of in the 80s. That's when I noticed it. And that's because I grew up in near the Palouse over here in Washington, and it's the biggest wheat producing county like in the world. And so I remember when the wheat was 4 feet high, blowing in waves of grain and all that, right? And then in the 80s is when they really changed everything. They got the real short, stubby wheat. They call it Franken wheat. I studied it, and the wheat really, the grains are just so terrible for you, you know. And that's when it really started changing. It was like right then in the 80s, and that's when they took iodine out of the bread and all that stuff. So so that's when so because we wouldn't even have this conversation in the 70s, right? We wouldn't be worrying about it. and just the explosion of Alzheimer's and ADHD and all, autism, all these things happened since then, right? So it's not so to speak, we can't go back to the 70s. We have to do what we can right now.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is when you think about that, we've had the explosion of all these diseases and all these conditions and all these problems and obesity and whatever, but they still want us to believe that the problem is saturated fat. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's nuts. I mean, when I grew up, so my mom and dad got divorced when I was real young, and so my when I lived with my mom, we were poor and we didn't really eat that much, And she was a ski instructor, so we'd go up to the mountain, eat peanut butter and jelly, and ski. And then I would live with my dad, and he was kind of rich, he was a contractor. And then I water skied all summer. So, so like I never did have much of a focus on food growing up. So it's like you're just out there living life, you know. And then, but now, all of society revolves around food, kind of, and being healthy. I mean, it's just such a change, because when I was a kid, you'd rarely go to school and not see some other kid with a black eye, right? And that's forbidden now. You can't be a boy and go have a fight with your friend anymore. That's all gone, right? You can't do that anymore. So, yeah, society passed me up, but that's why we're here is we're trying to help people be healthy now, because we have so many more issues.
Let me just confirm. You're doing OMAD now, and that OMAD you're doing is the 20 pounds of 20 pounds, 2 pounds of canned beef that you're having each day.
Correct. I started out doing OMAD, and now I do basically 2 meals a day because you can you still need to get the right amount of calories and good stuff in, and I can't eat that amount in one sitting anymore. So I basically do 2 meals a day.
So if a friend came to you and said, "Okay, John, you're doing really well. You've got all this energy. I want some of that for myself. How do I get started? What do I do to get healthier?" What would you say to them? What advice would you give?
Yeah, so I think the best thing to do is to cut the carbs first. So your mitochondria kind of have to die off because you're used to eating this sugar all the time. So your mitochondria is used to using that for fuel. So go cut out the sugar, the carbs, and then for like 30 days. Then that gives your mitochondria a chance to die off and come back again using the fat as fuel. Then, if you're not hungry in the morning, well, just don't eat. Don't eat until you're hungry, so you can kind of close that window of eating so you're not snacking all the time. So then you eat, and then here I got this. So you say, well, like you have this plate full of food, right? So let's say you have bacon and eggs, potatoes, and some toast, right? And you tell them, well, just eat. Well, I just want you to eat the eggs and bacon, right? So they just put that much on their plate. It's like, no, no, your whole plate is full of food, right? So fill up your plate with bacon and eggs. Make sure it's still full. And then you eat until you're full. You can't just cut out the carbs. You replace them with good food, right? And that's the trick. And then the only other thing is make sure you take salt and iodine with look up Dr. Dave Brownstein and his interview with Judy Cho. So I recommend that. Iodine has really been a great thing for me. But that's about it, and everybody, like I said, is kind of on their own journey. But if you even just start out cutting out like seed oils, you're a long ways there. And then the next thing would be grains. If you just cut out grains, then man, you're like 80% there if you just cut out seed oils and grains. And sugar, if you just cut that out, man, you're there. And then just if you're tired, you're probably low on salt. And and if you can find a keto doctor, or just like what I did, I just keep watching the doctors that are on YouTube and stuff like that. Depending on how sick you are and stuff. But that's it. Figure out your why. Figure out why you're going to do it, and then give yourself a good chance to do it. A lot of people like to, some people jump in the water, and some people like to put their toe in at first, right? So everybody's a little different. So, but cut out the sugar and let your body heal, and then start doing some fasting, and that will take care of it. And that's your journey. And
Hmm.
just keep
No,
keep doing research.
nice. Um, so John, how can people reach out to you? Do you have any social media or any way of getting in contact?
Yeah, you can put my email up there, and I have let's see, I have a YouTube channel, and it's Canonen 100, and I'm going to start doing a little more videos. I have a couple up there right now of sailing and stuff like that. Yeah, if anybody wants to talk to me, or go sailing out here in the Puget Sound, give me a call.
No worries. I'll link to your YouTube and your email in the show notes. John, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really
Yeah,
appreciate your time.
thank you, Dave.